Unit 7, Lesson 2, The Direct Approach. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conflict Resolution and Peacemaking, the class that teaches you how to manage interpersonal conflict and drama for yourself and others. I'm your instructor, David Lowry. In our last lesson, we discussed the importance of having a plan or processes. Today, we will learn about the direct approach, which is beneficial for resolving personal and interpersonal conflict. Should you ever need to work things out with another person, this is the process you may use to guide you safely through the resolution process. The direct approach is best suited for one-on-one meetings. It allows each person to express their concerns and work towards a resolution. The direct approach. For some, face-to-face meetings seem risky, so they never try to mend their poor relationships. They leave things the way they are or give up too soon. Some are too fearful of trying and making things worse. And that's a shame, because all of us can learn enough to become reasonably good at restoring strained relationships and resolving difficult interpersonal conflicts. Our approach utilizes a 3-day rule, preparing for what needs to be said ahead of time, and following a special communication process. Armed with this knowledge, most people can overcome typical forms of drama and conflict, provided they maintain a humble attitude. No rules dictate who should take the first steps towards eliminating drama and conflict. Just because, from your point of view, you didn't start a conflict, doesn't mean you can't be the first to try and make things better. We encourage you to consider this. The person with the higher consciousness is the one who should initiate the peacemaking process. If you perceive a problem, it's up to you to take the initiative to try and make things better, even when you don't feel entirely responsible for the bad feelings between you and another. We offer the 3-day rule to help you decide whether you should try to make peace with someone. We first heard about the rule in one of Ken Sande's Peacemaker training sessions, and it goes like this. When something upsetting happens between you and another, try not to react immediately. Instead, allow 3 days to pass. However, if at the end of 3 days, you find that you are still thinking about what has happened and it continues to hold some negative charge, then it's probably time for you to do something. But before you go to the other person, we encourage you to prepare to maximize your chances of a successful conflict resolution. Of all the steps, preparation is the most vital one. Far too often, people begin talking with others before pinpointing the reason for their upset, creating even more drama and misunderstanding. When we become triggered, we lose perspective and objectivity. According to Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of nonviolent communication, the main reason our emotions trigger is so we can protect a vital need. The problem is that we don't always have a conscious understanding of the specific need. Thus, our pre-meeting preparation aims to identify these feelings and needs. Once we have clarity, we rehearse what we wish to say at our meeting, uncovering feelings and needs. In other lessons, we discussed feelings and needs inventories. For your convenience, we have uploaded these lists for your use in this lesson. Please download copies of these lists if you don't already have them. Circle feelings and needs. First, look over the list of feelings and circle the top 5 that seem the most relevant to your present situation. For instance, you may be feeling anxious, angry, and frustrated. Circling descriptions of how you feel will help you gain the clarity you seek about your drama and conflict. At this point, it's important to remember that others are not responsible for our feelings, even if they seem to enjoy our reactivity. We alone are responsible for how we feel. Further, we must understand that our emotions are often triggered by unconscious memories over which we have little or no control. It's enough to say that we feel what we feel without blaming ourselves and others for having these feelings. The next step is to uncover the need you are protecting. Just as you did with the list of emotions, circle 3 to 5 needs that are most relevant to you. Now that you have your feelings and needs, you must pair the right feeling with the correct need. And you do this by asking the question, am I feeling whatever you feel because I need whatever your need is? For example, if you've identified one of your feelings as angry and one of your needs as appreciation, ask the question, am I feeling angry because I need appreciation? Go through this process until you reach a clear and convincing clarity. Next, decide on your request. We must clarify what we want to ask the other person to do for us going forward in the form of a request. Since people are not mind readers, we must let them know what we want them to do. Remember, we don't make demands, we make requests, and these give others the right to honor our request or not. For example, a request you might make is this: David, I'm requesting you allow me to arrive at work 10 minutes late each day so that I might drop my child off at daycare. I will stay 10 minutes later each day to make up the time. Rehearse what you will say. Next, we rehearse what we're going to say and how we're going to say it. It's like practicing a speech or rehearsing anything of importance. You'll notice that we add an additional step to Rosenberg's NVC process. Our rehearsal has 4 parts. First, we objectively describe events. Secondly, we state our part in the drama or conflict. Third, we give a statement of our wants and needs. And fourth, we make a request for action going forward. Let's talk about objectively describing events. First, we take the time to strip out all evaluations and judgments we carry about the event. When we talk about events that make us angry, most of us are quick to use evaluative language. This causes us to blame, shame, judge, exaggerate, or have meanings that bias towards negativity. Our aim is to describe the event that upset us using neutral or non-valuative descriptions. As an illustration, consider this sentence. Jack was yelling his head off and making a fool of himself. Can't you hear the negativity and judgment in that sentence? It's better if we come to a point where we can describe events in a more neutral, calm, and non-evaluative way. So we might reframe the sentence to, as I visited with Jack and began talking about the Murphy account, his voice became louder than usual, and he told me, mind your own business. Descriptions eliminate the negative charge and judgment associated with an event. We write our descriptions so we can examine it carefully for loaded words or judgmental language. Further, it's best to accurately quote what Jack has said rather than embellishing or interpreting what Jack meant. We work on our description until we can describe events without judgment or negativity. Once we have this form of objectivity, we are ready for the next step. Own your part of the conflict. Now it's time to reflect on ways we may have inadvertently contributed to the conflict. Misunderstandings are interactive events where everyone plays a role. If we deny our part in a misunderstanding, we cannot expect others to own their part. It does no good to claim that we are fully victimized or to blame others because we had no intention of harming anyone. Even though this reflective step can be difficult for us, we must take time to reflect on our behaviors from the viewpoint of others. If we're willing to do so, we can uncover how we handled ourselves and how it may have contributed to our present misunderstanding. Perhaps we offered unsolicited advice when we shouldn't have. Maybe our demeanor appeared as less than caring or unfriendly. Other times, we know the exact thing we have said or done that made matters worse. The point is not to blame ourselves or others, nor is it about justifying what we may have done. It's about our desire to be vulnerable and admit our intentional or unintentional mistakes. As we uncover mistakes we have made, we need to consider whether an apology is in order. Remember, just because we acknowledge our part in some problem does not mean we must accept the entire blame for all that happened. It just means that we are willing to admit our shortcomings. Our willingness to do so can serve as an incentive for others to do the same thing. Sometimes acknowledging we have acted in frustration or behaved poorly is all that's needed to start a mutual exchange of apologies and set things straight. So come prepared to own your part, however large or small, in this event. Next, rehearse how you will present your feelings, needs, and requests you uncovered earlier. Again, we encourage you to write this down and orally rehearse what you will say. Here's a short example. Jack, do you remember when you talked with Susan last Thursday and I walked up? Do you remember we began talking about the Murphy account and you said to me, everybody makes dumb mistakes. Let's do better next time. I want to apologize for my part in mishandling the Murphy account. I should have been more careful and paid better attention to details. I intend to apologize to Mr. Murphy and make things right. We have a good relationship, and I believe he will understand. But I felt angry and embarrassed at that meeting with you, me, and Susan. I felt angry because I needed understanding. I didn't think that everything that happened was my fault. I felt ashamed because I needed privacy, and I knew that Susan was overhearing what you were saying to me. I understood that we needed to talk about this, but in the future, my request is that you speak with me privately, not publicly. Remember, these are practice conversations that you do until you feel ready for your real one-on-one meeting. Keep rehearsing what you want to say until you know exactly how you want to say it. Finally, be mindful that our request may change once we hear from others. We may have a change of heart or modify our request in some way after listening to their concerns. In any case, whether we get what we want or what we ask for isn't as important as having the courage to speak up for our needs. If you do your preparation, you will find that the direct approach is simplicity itself, but more importantly, it's a process that works. We encourage you to use the direct approach the next time you experience interpersonal drama and teach others how to use this process as well. Remember, most people dread conflict because they don't know how to manage disagreements without attacking, retreating, or showing a lot of reactivity. The process we've described strips away anger and reactivity while holding yourself and others accountable. In our next podcast, we will introduce a process we call the 6-step approach. We thank you for listening to today's podcast and encourage you to download a copy of this program's transcript so you might complete a short quiz over today's presentation.